Have you ever wondered what happens when you meet someone who changed your life forever, but you never had the courage to tell them? Laura Monroe thought she'd buried those feelings deep in her past, until one autumn afternoon in Boston changed everything. Sometimes the most beautiful love stories are the ones that take years to unfold. Before we dive into this emotional journey, please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The bell above the door chimed softly as Lara stepped into Whitmore's books, the scent of old paper and leather bindings wrapped around her like a familiar embrace. The bell above the door chimed softly as Lara stepped into Whitmore's books, the scent of old paper and leather bindings wrapped around her like a familiar embrace. October in Boston always made her nostalgic. The crimson leaves outside reminded her of her Harvard days, when literature felt like the most important thing in the world. She wandered toward the poetry section, her fingers trailing along worn spines. Dickinson, Plath, Yeats, names that once filled her notebooks with passionate analysis. Looking for anything specific? The voice froze her blood. Lara turned slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. There, behind a stack of first editions, stood Dr. Helena Carter. Her former professor looked older. Silver threads wove through her dark hair, and fine lines mapped the corners of her eyes. But those eyes, God, those eyes were exactly the same. Professor Carter? Lara's voice came out barely above a whisper. Helena's face went pale. The book in her hands, a collection of Sylvia Plath, slipped and hit the floor with a soft thud. Lara. She said the name like a prayer. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing. Lara bent to pick up the fallen book, their fingers brushing as Helena reached for it too. Electric. Still electric after all these years. Helena pulled her hand back as if burned. I work here now, part-time. Work here? Lara couldn't hide her shock. But you're a professor. You have tenure at Harvard. Had. Helena's voice was barely audible. I left. The words hung between them like smoke. Lara stared at the woman who had once commanded lecture halls with the passion of someone who believed literature could save souls. You left Harvard? Lara repeated, certain she'd misheard. Helena nodded, her eyes fixed on the Plath collection. 2 years ago. But why? You loved teaching. You were brilliant at it. A shadow crossed Helena's face. She straightened, putting distance between them. Things change, Lara. People change. But as Helena turned away, Lara caught something in her expression. A flicker of the same intensity that used to fill their classroom discussions about forbidden love in Victorian novels. I remember your classes, Lara said softly. You made Jane Eyre feel like she was speaking directly to us. Helena's shoulders tensed. That was a long time ago. Not that long. 5 years. Long enough. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Lara remembered sitting in the front row, hanging on every word Helena spoke about passion and restraint in literature. She remembered staying after class with questions that weren't really about the syllabus. You look good, Lara said finally. Different, but good. Helena's laugh was hollow. I look tired. You look like someone who's been carrying something heavy. Their eyes met across the narrow aisle. For a moment, Lara saw past the careful composure to the woman underneath. Vulnerable, guarded, achingly familiar. I should go, Helena said, but she didn't move. Should you? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Helena's fingers tightened around the book spine. Lara, please, don't. Don't what? Don't look at me like that. Like what? Like you used to, in class. When you thought I wasn't watching. The admission hit Lara like a physical blow, so Helena had noticed. All those stolen glances, all those moments when Lara thought she was being subtle. Helena had seen everything. I was young, Lara whispered. You were 23. I was 35. You were my student. I'm not your student now. The words escaped before Lara could stop them. Helena's breath caught, her knuckles white against the book cover. No. Helena said slowly. You're not. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the old windows. The bookstore felt smaller suddenly, intimate in a way that made Lara's pulse quicken. What happened, Helena? Really? Why did you leave? Helena closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. Because I couldn't do it anymore. Do what? Pretend. The word fell between them like a stone into still water, sending ripples through everything Lara thought she understood about their past. Helena set the book down with trembling hands. I have to close up soon. It's only 4 o'clock. I know what time it is. But she made no move to leave. Instead, she stood there, looking at Lara with an expression that was part longing, part terror. I think about you sometimes, Lara said quietly. Wonder what you're doing, if you're happy. Don't. Why not? Because it's dangerous. What's dangerous about wondering? Helena's laugh was sharp, bitter. Everything. Absolutely everything. The bell chimed again as another customer entered. Helena straightened immediately, her professional mask sliding back into place. Can I help you? She called to the newcomer, but her eyes never left Lara's face. The customer, an elderly man looking for travel guides, wandered toward the back of the store. Helena and Lara were alone again, but the spell was broken. I should let you work, Lara said. Yes, you should. Neither of them moved. Will you be here tomorrow? Lara asked. Helena hesitated. I work Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tomorrow's Tuesday. I know. Maybe I'll come back. For a book. Maybe you shouldn't. But maybe I will anyway. Helena's composure cracked just slightly. Lara. What? Nothing. Just be careful. Of what? But Helena had already turned away, busying herself with straightening already straight shelves. Lara lingered for another moment, memorizing the curve of Helena's neck, the way her hair fell across her cheek. Then she walked to the door, pausing with her hand on the handle. Helena? Yes? I'm glad I found you. She left before Helena could respond, but not before she saw the way Helena's hand flew to her throat, as if trying to catch her breath. Outside, the October air bit at Lara's cheeks. She walked slowly down Charles Street, her mind reeling. Helena Carter. After 5 years of wondering, 5 years of trying to forget, she'd found her in the last place she'd expected. And Helena had left Harvard, left the career she'd built, the life she'd loved. Because she couldn't pretend anymore. Pretend what? But even as Lara asked herself the question, she knew the answer. It was written in every careful word Helena had spoken, every guarded glance, the same thing Lara had been pretending for 5 years. That what happened between them in those literature classes was purely academic. That the electricity when their hands touched was imagination. That the way Helena looked at her sometimes, like she was seeing straight through to her soul, meant nothing at all. Lara pulled out her phone and typed a quick text to her editor. Need to extend my Boston assignment. Found a story worth telling. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Tomorrow was Tuesday. And Lara Monroe had never been one to back down from a story, especially one that might finally give her the answers she'd been seeking for 5 years. Behind her, through the bookstore window, Helena stood perfectly still among the poetry shelves, watching Lara disappear into the autumn evening. And for the first time in 2 years, she allowed herself to hope. Lara couldn't sleep. She lay in her hotel room overlooking Boston Common, staring at the ceiling as memories crashed over her like waves. Every detail of that afternoon 5 years ago came flooding back with startling clarity. Miss Monroe, could you stay after class? Helena's voice had been carefully neutral, but Lara had caught the slight tremor underneath. She'd been discussing Lara's paper on Emily Dickinson. Brilliant work, Helena had said, but there was something more she wanted to explore. They'd sat in Helena's office as autumn light slanted through tall windows. Helena had leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. You write about isolation and longing like someone who understands them intimately. Your analysis of I'm nobody, who are you, goes beyond academic interpretation. Lara had felt heat rise in her cheeks. Is that bad? No, it's extraordinary. But it makes me wonder, what are you really writing about, Lara? The question had hung between them, loaded with meaning neither dared acknowledge. Now, 5 years later, Lara finally understood what Helena had been asking. She rolled over, checking her phone. 3:47 a.m. In a few hours, she'd go back to Whitmore's books, back to Helena. The thought made her stomach flutter like she was 23 again. Tuesday morning dawned gray and drizzling. Lara spent an hour getting ready, changing clothes 3 times before settling on dark jeans and a cream sweater. Casual but put together, professional but approachable. She was overthinking everything. The bookstore was quiet when she arrived at 11. Helena stood behind the counter, reading glasses perched on her nose as she cataloged new arrivals. She looked up when the bell chimed, and Lara saw her breath catch. "You came back." "I said I would." Helena set down her pen with deliberate care. "Looking for anything specific today?" The formal tone stung, but Lara pressed on. "Actually, yes. I'm working on an article about independent bookstores in Boston. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" It was a lie, but a useful one. Helena's expression shifted slightly, still guarded, but curious. "I suppose that would be all right." Lara pulled out her phone and notebook, settling into the role of journalist. It felt safer than whatever they'd been dancing around yesterday. "How long has Whitmore's been open?" 43 years. Mr. Whitmore started it in 1980, right after he retired from teaching at Boston University. "And you've been here 2 years?" "Yes." Helena's voice was clipped. "What drew you to bookselling after academia?" Helena was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes we need a change of scenery." "That's quite a change, though, from Harvard professor to bookstore clerk." "I'm not a clerk. I'm a partner now. Mr. Whitmore is 87. He needed help with the business side." There was pride in her voice, defensive but real. Lara made a note, genuinely interested despite her ulterior motives. "Do you miss teaching?" Helena's pen stilled. "Every day." The honesty surprised them both. Helena looked away quickly, but not before Lara saw the pain flash across her features. "Then why—" "Next question, please." Lara studied Helena's profile. The sharp line of her jaw, the way she held herself so carefully controlled. This was the woman who used to pace the front of lecture halls, gesturing passionately as she brought dead poets to life. Now she seemed diminished somehow, like she was holding herself back. "What's your favorite section of the store?" Helena's expression softened slightly. "Poetry. Always poetry." "Any particular poets?" "The usual suspects. Dickinson, Plath, Adrienne Rich." She paused. "Though lately I've been drawn to contemporary voices. Ocean Vuong, Tracy K. Smith." "I love Ocean Vuong," Lara said, forgetting to maintain professional distance. "His work on inherited trauma is incredible." Helena's eyes lit up, the first genuine spark Lara had seen. "Yes, the way he weaves personal narrative with historical memory. It's extraordinary." For a moment, they were just 2 literature lovers sharing enthusiasm. The careful walls between them lowered slightly. "I have a signed first edition of Night Sky with Exit Wounds," Helena continued. "Would you like to see it?" She led Lara to a locked display case near the poetry section. As she bent to retrieve the book, her sleeve rode up, revealing a small tattoo on her wrist, a line of text in elegant script. Lara squinted, trying to read it. "Tell me, what else should I have done?" Helena froze. "You know that poem?" "Mary Oliver. The Summer Day, one of my favorites." Helena's hand moved instinctively to cover the tattoo. "I got it after I left Harvard, a reminder." "Of what?" "That life is short. That we shouldn't waste it on regret." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Helena handed Lara the Vuong collection, their fingers brushing again. This time, neither pulled away. "Helena," Lara said softly, "what really happened? Why did you leave?" Helena's composure wavered. She glanced around the empty store, then back at Lara. "You want the truth?" "Always." Helena took a shaky breath. "I fell in love with someone I couldn't have. Someone it would have been wrong to pursue, so I left." Lara's heart hammered. "Who?" But Helena had already stepped back, the professional mask sliding into place. "I think that's enough questions for today." "Helena, wait." The bell chimed as another customer entered, a young woman with a crying baby. Helena moved toward them immediately, grateful for the interruption. "Can I help you find anything?" Lara stood frozen by the poetry display, Helena's words echoing in her mind. "I fell in love with someone I couldn't have." She watched Helena coo softly at the baby, her whole demeanor transforming. This was the woman Lara remembered. Warm, nurturing, impossibly kind. The woman who'd made every student feel seen and valued. The woman who'd made Lara feel like the most important person in the room. The customer left with a parenting guide and picture book. Helena busied herself straightening shelves, avoiding Lara's gaze. "I should go," Lara said finally. "Probably best. But I'll be back." Helena looked up sharply. "Lara? Thursday. You said you work Thursdays." "This isn't a good idea." "Maybe not, but I'm coming anyway." Lara left the Vuong book on the counter and headed for the door. As she reached for the handle, Helena's voice stopped her. "Lara?" "Yes?" "The person I fell in love with, they never knew. I made sure of that." Lara turned slowly. Helena stood behind the counter, her hands gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles were white. "Are you sure about that?" Lara asked quietly. Helena's breath caught. For a moment, she looked exactly like she had in those after-class conversations. Vulnerable, uncertain, achingly beautiful. "I have to be sure," she whispered. "Because if I'm wrong, if they knew and didn't feel the same way, it would destroy me." The admission hung in the air between them, like a bridge neither dared cross. "What if you're wrong about being wrong?" Lara asked. Helena closed her eyes. "Then I've wasted 5 years being afraid." "It's not too late, isn't it?" Lara wanted to cross the room, to take Helena's face in her hands and tell her everything she'd been too young and scared to say 5 years ago. Instead, she gripped the door handle tighter. "I'll see you Thursday, Helena." She left before she could do something they'd both regret. Outside, the drizzle had turned to proper rain. Lara walked slowly back toward her hotel, her mind spinning. Helena had been in love with someone she couldn't have. Someone from her teaching days, clearly. Someone who never knew. But Lara had known. On some level, she'd always known. The way Helena looked at her during class discussions. The way she'd linger after everyone else left, finding excuses to keep talking. The way her voice softened when she said Lara's name. The way she'd looked devastated the day Lara graduated. They never knew. I made sure of that. But Helena was wrong. Lara had known, had felt the pull between them like gravity. She'd just been too young, too uncertain, too afraid of misreading the signals to act on it. And now Helena thought she'd suffered alone. Lara pulled out her phone and typed a text. "The person you fell in love with, what if they felt the same way?" She stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it. Some conversations couldn't happen over text. Some conversations required courage. And Lara was finally ready to be brave. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. Lara spent Wednesday researching, not for her fictional article about bookstores, but for answers about Helena's departure from Harvard. She called contacts in the English department, claiming to be working on a piece about faculty retention in higher education. The responses were frustratingly vague. "Dr. Carter? Brilliant scholar. Such a shame she left. Personal reasons, I believe. Very sudden. She didn't give much notice, just submitted her resignation and was gone by the end of the semester." But it was her conversation with Dr. Margaret Henley, Helena's former colleague, that provided the first real clue. "Helena was different that last semester," Margaret said over coffee near Harvard Square. "Distracted. She'd always been passionate about teaching, but suddenly she seemed, I don't know, conflicted." "Conflicted how?" "Like she was fighting some internal battle. She stopped coming to faculty meetings, avoided department social events, and her teaching evaluations." Margaret paused. They were still excellent, but the comments were strange. Strange how? Students kept mentioning how emotional she seemed. One wrote that Dr. Carter looked like she was in pain whenever she discussed certain poems. Another said she seemed to be teaching from personal experience rather than academic distance. Lara's pulse quickened. "Do you remember which semester this was?" "Fall 2019, her last semester." Margaret studied Lara's face. "Why are you really asking about Helena? This doesn't feel like research for an article." Lara deflected, but Margaret's words haunted her. Fall 2019. That was the semester after Lara graduated, when she'd been working her first journalism job in New York. She'd thought about reaching out to Helena dozens of times, but had always talked herself out of it. What if she had? Would things have been different? Thursday morning arrived gray and cold. Lara stood outside Whitmore's books for 10 minutes before working up the courage to go inside. Helena was shelving returns in the fiction section, her movements precise and methodical. She looked up when the bell chimed, and Lara saw resignation in her eyes. "You came back. Again." "I keep my promises." Helena set down the stack of books. "What do you want from me, Lara?" The directness caught Lara off guard. "I want to understand." "Understand what?" "Why you left. Why you're here instead of where you belong." "This is where I belong now." "Is it?" "Because you look miserable." Helena's composure cracked slightly. "You don't know anything about my life." "Then tell me. Help me understand." They stared at each other across the narrow aisle. Helena looked tired, like she'd been fighting this conversation for days. "There's nothing to understand. I made a choice. I'm living with it." "What choice?" "To leave before I did something I'd regret." "Like what?" Helena turned away, but not before Lara saw the flash of pain in her eyes. Like falling in love with a student, the words hit Lara like a physical blow. There it was. The truth they'd been dancing around for 2 days. "Helena, don't." Helena's voice was sharp. "Don't say whatever you're thinking of saying." "You don't know what I'm thinking. I know enough. I know you're kind and you feel sorry for me. I know you probably think you understand what I went through, but you don't." Lara stepped closer. "Then explain it to me." Helena laughed bitterly. "Explain what?" "How I spent 2 years watching you in my classroom, hanging on every word you said. How I looked forward to your essays more than anything else in my week. How I had to stop myself from reaching out to touch your hand when you got excited about a poem." Each word was like a confession torn from her throat. Lara stood frozen, finally hearing the truth she'd suspected but never dared hope for. "How I wrote your recommendation letters and felt like I was losing a piece of myself." Helena continued, her voice breaking. "How I watched you graduate and wanted to tell you everything but knew I couldn't. How I spent the next semester trying to teach the same poems we'd discussed and hearing your voice in every line." Tears were streaming down Helena's face now. "How I finally realized I couldn't do it anymore because every student reminded me of you, and it wasn't fair to them or to me or to me." Lara finished quietly. Helena nodded, wiping her eyes with shaking hands. "To you. Because you deserved a professor who could focus on your education, not someone who was falling apart every time you smiled." The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of unspoken truth. "You left because of me," Lara said. "I left because of me, because I couldn't handle my own feelings." "Helena, look at me. I can't. Please." Slowly, Helena raised her eyes. They were red-rimmed but still beautiful, still the same eyes that had captivated Lara in lecture halls. "You weren't the only one," Lara said softly. Helena's breath caught. "What?" "You weren't the only one falling apart. You weren't the only one who looked forward to those conversations. You weren't the only one who felt something that shouldn't have been there." Helena shook her head. Don't say that just to make me feel better." "I'm not." Lara stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in Helena's brown eyes. "I'm saying it because it's true. You were 23. You had your whole life ahead of you. I was 23 and completely infatuated with my literature professor. I was 23 and writing papers I hoped would impress you. I was 23 and staying after class just to hear you say my name." Helena's hands were trembling. "Lara, stop. I was 23 and in love with you, Helena. Completely, hopelessly in love." The words hung in the air like a bridge finally built between them. Helena closed her eyes. "You don't understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly. I understood then too. I just didn't know what to do about it." "There was nothing to do. I was your professor. But you're not anymore." Helena's eyes snapped open. "What?" "You're not my professor anymore. I'm not your student. We're just two adults who what? Who wasted 5 years being afraid? Who found each other again." Helena stared at her, and Lara saw the exact moment when hope crept into her expression. "This is crazy," Helena whispered. "Maybe. But crazy doesn't mean wrong. I'm 40 now, Lara. You're 28. I'm set in my ways. I have baggage. You're brilliant and kind and the most passionate person I've ever known. You made me fall in love with poetry. You made me fall in love with learning. You made me fall in love with you. Helena's composure finally shattered completely. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. I thought about you every day, she whispered through her fingers, every single day for 5 years. Lara reached out slowly, gently pulling Helena's hands away from her face. So did I. They stood there, hands linked, years of longing finally acknowledged between them. What do we do now? Helena asked. I don't know, but we figure it out together. Helena's smile was watery but real. I can't believe you're here. I can't believe you feel the same way. I can't believe you left Harvard because of me. Because of us. Because of what I felt for you. Do you regret it? Helena considered the question seriously. I regret the pain. I regret the years we lost, but I don't regret protecting you from a situation that could have hurt your career. My career would have been fine. You don't know that. Academic relationships are complicated, especially with power imbalances. I couldn't risk your future for my feelings. Lara squeezed Helena's hands. You're a good person, Helena Carter. Too good, maybe. Not good enough to stop myself from falling in love with you. Thank God for that. Helena laughed. The first genuine laugh Lara had heard from her. It transformed her face, bringing back the vibrant woman Lara remembered. So what now? Helena asked again. Now we take it slow. We figure out who we are outside of that classroom. We see if this thing between us is real or just nostalgia. It's real, Helena said immediately. At least for me. For me, too. But we still take it slow. Helena nodded. Slow is good. Slow is smart. Can I take you to dinner? Tomorrow night? Helena's smile was radiant. I'd like that very much. It's a date, then. A date, Helena repeated like she was testing the words. I haven't been on a date in... God, I don't even remember. Neither have I. Not a real one. They stood there grinning at each other like teenagers, hands still linked, 5 years of separation finally bridged. The bell chimed as a customer entered, breaking the spell. Helena stepped back, but her smile remained. I should... Go ahead. I'll just browse for a while. Lara spent the next hour wandering the store, stealing glances at Helena as she helped customers. She watched the way Helena's face lit up when discussing books, the gentle way she guided a young mother toward the children's section, the careful attention she paid to an elderly man looking for large print mysteries. This was Helena in her element, not diminished, but transformed. She'd found a different way to share her love of literature, one that didn't carry the weight of institutional pressure or ethical complications. Maybe leaving Harvard hadn't been just about running away. Maybe it had been about finding a new path. As closing time approached, Helena walked over to where Lara sat reading in the poetry section. Find anything interesting? Lara held up a collection of Adrienne Rich. Just revisiting an old favorite. 21 Love Poems? You know it? Helena's cheeks flushed slightly. I may have read it a few times, recently. Any particular reason? Research. For a personal project. Lara raised an eyebrow but didn't push. There would be time for all their secrets later. I should let you close up, Lara said, standing. Tomorrow night. 7 o'clock? Perfect. Where should I pick you up? Helena hesitated. Actually, could we meet somewhere? I'm not quite ready for... my apartment is... Of course. How about that little Italian place on Newbury Street? Giacomo's? Perfect. They walked to the door together, the weight of the day's revelations settling between them. Helena. Yes? Thank you for telling me the truth. Thank you for coming back. For not giving up. Lara reached out and squeezed Helena's hand one more time. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow. As Lara walked away, she heard Helena lock the door behind her. But when she glanced back, Helena was still standing in the window, watching her go. For the first time in 5 years, Lara felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Lara changed clothes 4 times before settling on a simple black dress and boots. She wanted to look nice without trying too hard, attractive without being obvious about it. She was nervous as hell. At 6:55, she stood outside Giacomo's, watching through the window as Helena sat at a corner table, reading. Even in the dim restaurant lighting, she was beautiful, her dark hair pulled back loosely, a soft gray sweater that brought out her eyes. Lara took a deep breath and went inside. "Sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into the seat across from Helena. "You're not late." "I'm early. Nervous habit." Helena closed her book, a worn copy of Jane Eyre, and smiled. She looked different outside the bookstore. Softer somehow. Less guarded. "Good choice," Lara said, nodding at the book. "I was rereading the scene where Jane leaves Thornfield. Seemed appropriate." "Why?" "Sometimes you have to walk away from what you love to save yourself." Their eyes met across the small table. "And sometimes you get a second chance," Lara said quietly. Helena's smile was radiant. "Sometimes you do." They ordered wine and fell into easy conversation about books, about Boston, about everything except the elephant in the room. What they were doing here, what this meant, where it might lead. "Tell me about your journalism," Helena said as they shared an appetizer. "Are you happy with it?" "Most of the time. I love the research, the interviews, the puzzle of putting a story together. Though I have to admit, I miss analyzing literature sometimes." "You could always go back to school, get your PhD." Lara shook her head. "I thought about it, but the academic world felt too small after a while, too insular. I like being out in the real world, telling stories that matter to people who aren't already converted." Helena nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that. Sometimes I felt like I was preaching to the choir at Harvard. The students who took my classes already loved literature. I wasn't really changing minds, but you were changing lives. You changed mine." "How?" Lara considered the question seriously. "You taught me that literature isn't just about understanding what dead poets meant. It's about understanding what they mean to us, right now, in our own lives. You taught me that reading is a conversation across time." Helena's eyes were bright. "That's beautiful. You taught me that, along with a lot of other things." "Like what?" "Like how to think critically, how to argue a point without being aggressive, how to find beauty in complexity." Lara paused. "How to fall in love with ideas and people?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. "That too," Lara said softly. Their main courses arrived, providing a welcome distraction from the intensity building between them. They talked about Helena's work at the bookstore, about Lara's latest assignments, about their families and friends, and the small details of their separate lives. "Do you ever regret leaving academia?" Lara asked as they shared dessert. Helena was quiet for a long moment. "I regret the circumstances that made me feel like I had to leave. But the leaving itself? No, I'm happier now, in some ways." "How so?" "Less pressure, less politics, more direct connection with readers, and," she hesitated, And I don't have to pretend anymore about who I am, what I want." "What do you want?" Helena met her eyes directly. "Right now? This. Dinner with you. The chance to get to know you as an adult, as an equal. And beyond right now, I'm trying not to think too far ahead. It's scary enough just being here." Lara reached across the table and took Helena's hand. "We don't have to figure everything out tonight." "I know, but I can't help wondering, what if this doesn't work? What if we're better as a memory than as a reality? What if we're not? What if this is exactly what we both need?" Helena squeezed her hand. "You're an optimist. You're a pessimist. I prefer realist. I prefer optimist." They laughed, and the tension eased slightly. "Walk with me?" Helena asked as they left the restaurant. They strolled down Newbury Street, past boutiques and cafes, their hands linked loosely. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of winter. "I have a confession," Helena said as they paused outside a bookstore window. "What's that?" "I kept all your papers, from my classes." Lara stopped walking. "You did?" "I know I shouldn't have. I should have thrown them away when I left Harvard. But I couldn't. They were too good, too insightful, too much a part of you. Where are they now?" "In a box in my apartment, along with..." Helena trailed off. "Along with what?" "Things I wrote. About you. Poems, mostly. Terrible, unpublishable poems about forbidden feelings and impossible situations. Lara's heart clenched. Helena. I know it's pathetic. A 40-year-old woman writing bad poetry about her former student. It's not pathetic. It's beautiful. You haven't read them. I don't need to. The fact that you wrote them is beautiful. They resumed walking, turning onto a quieter side street lined with brownstones. Can I ask you something? Lara said. Anything. That last day of class, when I came to say goodbye, you looked like you wanted to say something. What was it? Helena was quiet for so long that Lara thought she wouldn't answer. I wanted to tell you that you were the best student I'd ever had, that your insights into literature were extraordinary, that you had a gift for seeing connections others missed. But I also wanted to tell you that I was going to miss you more than was appropriate, that I'd looked forward to your contributions to class discussions more than anything else in my week, that I'd read your papers multiple times, not for grading purposes, but because I loved the way your mind worked. They stopped walking. Helena turned to face Lara directly. I wanted to tell you that you'd changed the way I thought about teaching, about literature, about myself, that you'd made me remember why I fell in love with poetry in the first place. Why didn't you? Because it would have been selfish, because it would have put you in an impossible position, because you were graduating and starting your life, and the last thing you needed was your professor complicating things with inappropriate feelings. Lara stepped closer. What if I'd wanted you to complicate things? You were 23, Lara. You didn't know what you wanted. I knew I wanted you. The words hung in the air between them. Helena's breath caught. You couldn't have known that, couldn't I? I stayed after every class. I wrote papers I hoped would impress you. I chose topics I thought would interest you. I hung on every word you said. You were a good student. I was a student in love with her professor. Helena closed her eyes. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. Because it makes everything I did feel even more wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. You were professional. You were ethical. You protected both of us. I fantasized about you. I wrote poems about you. I counted the days until your next class. And I did the same thing. We were both human, Helena. We both felt something we couldn't act on. That doesn't make us wrong. It makes us careful. Helena opened her eyes, and Lara saw tears there. I was so afraid, Helena whispered. Of what? Of ruining your life, of taking advantage, of being the professor who couldn't control herself. You did control yourself. You were perfect. I was miserable. So was I. But we survived it. And now we're here. Helena nodded slowly. Now we're here. They'd stopped in front of a small park, empty except for a few late-evening joggers. Helena led Lara to a bench under a streetlight. I need to tell you something else, Helena said. Okay. I'm scared. Terrified, actually. Of what? Of this. Of you. Of the way I feel when I look at you. Helena's voice was shaky. I haven't been in a relationship in years. I've been so focused on work, on keeping my feelings locked away, that I forgot how to be vulnerable with another person. We'll figure it out together. What if I'm too damaged? What if I've been alone so long that I don't know how to be with someone? Lara took Helena's hands in both of hers. Then we'll take it slow. We'll be patient with each other. We'll remember that this is new for both of us. You're not damaged, aren't I? I've spent 5 years comparing every person I dated to my memory of you. I've sabotaged relationships because no one could measure up to a fantasy. Helena's eyes widened. You dated other people? I tried. It never worked out. They weren't you. Lara, I know it's crazy. I know it's not healthy to build your life around someone you can't have, but I couldn't help it. You were the standard by which I measured everything else. That's not fair to you. Maybe not, but it's the truth. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands linked, processing the weight of their confessions. So what do we do now? Helena asked finally. Now we try. We see if the reality can live up to the fantasy. And if it can't, then at least we'll know. At least we won't spend the rest of our lives wondering. Helena smiled. You really are an optimist, and you really are worth the risk. Helena leaned closer, and for a moment, Lara thought she might kiss her. Instead, she rested her forehead against Lara's. Thank you, Helena whispered. For what? for finding me, for not giving up, for being brave enough to say what I couldn't. Thank you for being worth finding." They sat there under the streetlight, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. It felt like a beginning. "I should get you home," Lara said eventually. "I can take the tea. I'll walk you to the station." They made their way back to the main street, walking slowly, reluctant to end the evening. "Can I see you again?" Lara asked as they reached the subway entrance. "I'd be disappointed if you didn't ask." "Tomorrow?" Helena laughed. "Eager, aren't we? I've waited 5 years. I'm done being patient. Tomorrow I'm working until 6, but after that, I'll be waiting." Helena smiled and leaned up to kiss Lara's cheek. The contact was brief, innocent, but it sent electricity through Lara's entire body. "Good night, Lara. Good night, Helena." Lara watched until Helena disappeared down the subway stairs, then walked back to her hotel with a smile she couldn't suppress. For the first time in 5 years, the future felt full of possibility. The storm hit Boston without warning. Lara had spent the day working on actual articles, trying to maintain some semblance of professional responsibility, while her mind wandered constantly to Helena. She'd managed to file 2 pieces and conduct 3 phone interviews, but her heart wasn't in any of it. At 5:30, she gave up pretending to work and headed to Whitmore's books. The sky was already dark with clouds when she arrived, and the first fat raindrops were beginning to fall. Helena looked up from the register where she was helping a customer, and her face lit up with a smile that made Lara's chest tight. "You're early," Helena said once the customer left. "Couldn't concentrate on work. Kept thinking about last night. Good thoughts, I hope." "The best." Helena's cheeks flushed pink. Even after their dinner, after all their confessions, she still seemed surprised by Lara's directness. "I have about 20 minutes left," Helena said. "Mr. Whitmore is in the back doing inventory. I'll wait." Lara settled into the reading chair near the poetry section, watching Helena work. There was something mesmerizing about the way she moved through the store. Confident, graceful, completely in her element. She helped a teenager find a book for a school report, recommended a mystery novel to an elderly woman, and rang up purchases with genuine warmth. This was Helena without the weight of academic pressure, without the constant awareness of inappropriate feelings. She seemed lighter somehow, more herself. The rain intensified, drumming against the windows with increasing force. By 6 o'clock, it was a proper downpour. "Ready to make a run for it?" Helena asked, pulling on her coat. Lara looked out at the sheets of rain. "Maybe we should wait it out for a few minutes." "Good idea." "Mr. Whitmore," Helena called toward the back room. "I'm going to stay until this rain lets up." "Smart girl," came the muffled reply. "Lock up when you leave." Helena turned the sign to closed and locked the front door. Suddenly, they were alone in the quiet bookstore, rain pattering against the windows like fingers tapping for entry. "Cozy," Lara said. "Very." Helena seemed nervous again, the easy confidence from moments before replaced by uncertainty. "Are you okay?" "Just... this feels very intimate, being here alone with you." Lara understood. The bookstore after hours felt different. Smaller, more private, like a secret space that belonged only to them. "We could talk," Lara suggested. "Get to know each other better. What do you want to know?" "Everything. What you were like as a child. What made you fall in love with literature. What you dream about." Helena laughed softly. "That's a lot of ground to cover. We have time. This storm doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon." They settled into chairs near the poetry section, facing each other across a small table stacked with new releases. "I was a serious child," Helena began. "Always reading, always asking questions that made adults uncomfortable. My parents didn't know what to do with me." "What kind of questions? Why do people fall in love with the wrong person? Why do beautiful things make us sad? Why do poets write about death so much?" Lara smiled. "You were destined to be a literature professor." "I suppose I was, though I wanted to be a poet first." "What happened to that dream?" Helena's expression grew wistful. "Reality. Graduate school, the pressure to publish academic papers instead of creative work. I told myself I'd go back to poetry someday, but someday never came." "Until you left Harvard?" "Yes." I've been writing again. Not very good poetry, but poetry nonetheless. I'd love to read it sometime, maybe. If I ever get brave enough to share it. The rain continued to pound against the windows. Helena got up to make tea on the small hot plate in the back office, and they settled in for what was clearly going to be a long wait. Your turn, Helena said, curling up in her chair with her mug. Tell me about your childhood. Loud, chaotic. I'm the middle child of 5, so I learned early how to fight for attention. Is that why you became a journalist? For the attention? Maybe partly, but mostly because I loved stories. I wanted to understand how the world worked, why people did the things they did, and do you? Understand? Some days. Other days, people are complete mysteries to me. Helena smiled. Including me? Especially you. You're the most complex person I've ever met. Complex is a nice way of saying complicated. I like complicated. Simple people are boring. They talked for hours as the storm raged outside. Helena told Lara about her graduate school years, about the loneliness of academic life, about the day she realized she was more interested in her students' insights than her own research. Lara shared stories from her journalism career, the interviews that had changed her perspective, the articles she was proudest of, the constant struggle to balance objectivity with empathy. Do you ever miss it? Lara asked as they shared a bag of cookies Helena had found in the office. The academic world? I miss the intellectual stimulation sometimes. The conferences, the debates, the feeling of being part of a larger scholarly conversation. But I don't miss the politics, the pressure to publish or perish, the way everything became about career advancement instead of actual learning. And you don't miss teaching? Helena was quiet for a long moment. I miss teaching, but I don't miss the ethical minefield it became for me. Because of me. Because of my feelings for you. Because I couldn't trust myself to be objective anymore. Lara leaned forward. Can I ask you something that might be difficult? Yes. Were there other students? Before me, I mean. Did you ever feel this way about anyone else? Helena shook her head immediately. Never. Not once in 15 years of teaching. You were different. How? You challenged me. Not just intellectually, but personally. You made me question things I thought I knew about myself. Like what? Like whether I was capable of falling in love. I'd had relationships, but nothing that felt consuming. Nothing that made me understand why poets write about love like it's a form of madness. Lara's heart clenched. And I made you understand that? You made me understand everything. Why people throw away their lives for love. Why rational people make irrational choices. Why someone would rather suffer in silence than risk destroying something beautiful. The rain had softened to a gentle patter, but neither of them moved to leave. Helena? Lara said softly. Can I tell you something? Anything. I used to fantasize about this. About being alone with you somewhere. Being able to talk without worrying about who might see or what people might think. Helena's breath caught. You did. All the time. I'd imagine running into you at a coffee shop or a bookstore or... She gestured around them. Somewhere exactly like this. What would happen in these fantasies? We'd talk. Really talk. Without the barrier of teacher and student between us. And you'd see me as an equal. As someone worth knowing. Lara, you were always worth knowing. Even as my student, you were extraordinary. But you couldn't tell me that. Not the way you wanted to. No, I couldn't. They looked at each other across the small table, years of unspoken longing finally acknowledged between them. Can I tell you what I wanted to say that last day? Helena asked. Yes. Helena took a shaky breath. I wanted to tell you that you'd changed my life. That knowing you, teaching you, watching your mind work, it had been the greatest privilege of my career. Lara felt tears prick her eyes. I wanted to tell you that I was proud of you, not just as a student, but as a person, that you had integrity and compassion and intelligence that would take you far in life, Helena. And I wanted to tell you that I was falling in love with you, and it was the most terrifying and wonderful thing that had ever happened to me. The words hung in the air between them like a bridge finally completed. I wanted to hear that so badly. Lara whispered. I wanted to say it so badly it was killing me. And now? Now I'm terrified all over again. Because this is real now. This isn't a fantasy or a what if. This is you and me, here, with the chance to actually try. Lara stood up and moved to the chair next to Helena's. Are you ready to try? I don't know. Are you? I've been ready for 5 years. Helena reached out and touched Lara's face gently, tracing the line of her cheek with trembling fingers. You're so beautiful, she whispered. I used to try not to notice, but you're so beautiful. So are you. You always have been. Helena leaned closer, and this time, Lara didn't think she was going to pull away. Is this okay? Helena asked, her lips inches from Lara's. More than okay. Helena kissed her softly. Tent por favor. Continue girando a sua resposta. Agent Logo Novo prompt historia. Actively, like she was afraid Lara might disappear. It was gentle, sweet, full of 5 years of longing finally given permission to exist. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Wow, Lara whispered. Wow, Helena agreed. They sat there, foreheads touching, processing what had just happened. I can't believe we just did that, Helena said. I can't believe it took us this long. Helena laughed, and the sound was pure joy. We're really doing this, aren't we, if you want to? I want to. God, I want to so much it scares me. Then we're doing this. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, but neither of them was in any hurry to leave their cocoon of books and possibility. What happens now? Helena asked. Now we see where this goes, one day at a time. One kiss at a time? Lara smiled. If you're lucky. Helena kissed her again, longer this time, with more confidence. When they broke apart, her eyes were bright with tears. Thank you, she whispered. For what now? For being patient with me, for not giving up, for making me believe in second chances. Thank you for being worth waiting for. They held each other in the quiet bookstore, surrounded by thousands of love stories, finally writing their own. 3 weeks later, Lara had extended her Boston assignment indefinitely. Her editor wasn't thrilled, but Lara had pitched a series on independent bookstores that seemed to satisfy him. The truth was, she couldn't bear to leave, not when things with Helena were finally, impossibly beautifully real. They'd been taking it slow, just as they'd promised. Coffee dates, long walks through the common, dinners at quiet restaurants where they could talk for hours. Helena was gradually letting her walls down, sharing pieces of herself she'd kept hidden for years. But there were still boundaries. Helena hadn't invited Lara to her apartment. They'd kissed, sweet, tentative kisses that left Lara wanting more. But nothing beyond that. Helena seemed to be holding something back, some final piece of herself she wasn't ready to share. Lara was trying to be patient, but the waiting was killing her. You're distracted, Helena said as they walked through the public garden on a crisp November afternoon. Sorry, just thinking. About? Lara hesitated. They'd been honest with each other about everything else. Maybe it was time to be honest about this too. About you. About us. About the fact that I feel like you're still holding back. Helena stopped walking. What do you mean? I mean you won't let me see where you live. You change the subject whenever I ask about your writing. You kiss me like you're afraid I'm going to disappear. Maybe I am afraid you're going to disappear. Why would I disappear? Helena sat down on a nearby bench, looking out at the pond where a few late-season ducks paddled in lazy circles. Because when you see all of me, really see me, you might realize this isn't what you want. Lara sat beside her. What do you think I'm going to see that would scare me away? The truth. About how obsessed I was. About how much of my life I built around the memory of you. Helena, my apartment is full of books you recommended in class. I have copies of every article you've published. I wrote your name in the margins of poetry collections like a lovesick teenager. Helena's voice was getting smaller, more ashamed. I kept a folder of your papers on my computer. I reread them when I was feeling lost. I Googled you obsessively, looking for any trace of your life. Lara felt her heart break a little. Oh, Helena. See? You're already looking at me differently. I'm looking at you with love and recognition, Recognition. You think you're the only one who was obsessed? I have a Google alert set up for your name. I've read every academic paper you published. I bought books just because you mentioned them in class. Helena looked up, surprised. I drove past Harvard dozens of times when I was in Boston for work, hoping I might see you. I almost came to your office hours 100 times in the months after graduation, but I always chickened out. Really? Really, we were both a little crazy, Helena. That doesn't make us pathetic. It makes us human. Helena was quiet for a long moment. I want to show you something, but I'm terrified. What is it? My apartment, my writing, the evidence of just how far gone I was. Lara took Helena's hand. I want to see it. All of it. Even if it's embarrassing, even if it makes you realize I'm not the sophisticated professor you remember. Especially then. I don't want the sophisticated professor, Helena. I want you. The real you, with all your beautiful, messy humanity. Helena squeezed her hand. Okay. But don't say I didn't warn you. Helena's apartment was a cozy one-bedroom in Back Bay, filled with books and soft lighting, and the kind of comfortable clutter that spoke of a life fully lived. It was exactly what Lara had imagined. Warm, intellectual, slightly chaotic in the best way. Wine? Helena asked, clearly nervous. Please. Helena poured 2 glasses of red wine with shaking hands. The writing is in my bedroom, in a box under the bed. Very cliché, I know. Helena, breathe. It's just me. That's what makes it terrifying. Helena disappeared into the bedroom and returned with a shoebox that had seen better days. She set it on the coffee table like it might explode. 5 years of pathetic poetry and journal entries about a student I couldn't have. Are you sure you want to see this? I'm sure. Helena opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside were dozens of folded papers, notebooks, printed emails, and what looked like drafts of poems covered in crossouts and revisions. She pulled out a sheet of paper and handed it to Lara. This was the first one, written the night after you graduated. Lara unfolded the paper carefully. The poem was titled After Commencement, and written in Helena's careful handwriting. She walked across the stage in cap and gown, and I applauded with the rest, my heart breaking with each step that took her further from my life. I wanted to call her name, to tell her she was brilliant, to say the words I'd swallowed for 2 years. Instead, I smiled and shook her hand and said, "Congratulations," like she was just another student, like she hadn't changed everything I thought I knew about love. Lara felt tears prick her eyes. Helena, this is beautiful. It's terrible. The meter is all wrong and the imagery is cliched. It's honest. It's real. It's you. Helena pulled out another paper. This one's worse. I wrote it after I saw your first published article. I Googled your name again today and found your byline in a magazine I'd never heard of. You were writing about corruption in city government. Your words sharp and clear as the arguments you made in my classroom. I wanted to email you, to say I was proud, to tell you I always knew you'd change the world one story at a time. Instead, I printed the article and put it in a folder with all the others, evidence of a life I'm not allowed to celebrate. Lara was crying now, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming tenderness of it all. You kept track of my career? Every article, every byline. I have a whole folder on my computer. Show me. Helena hesitated, then got her laptop. She opened a folder labeled LM, and Lara saw dozens of saved articles, screenshots of her social media posts, even a few photos from journalism conferences that someone had posted online. This is... Lara didn't know how to finish the sentence. Stalkerish, obsessive, completely inappropriate, devoted, loving, the most romantic thing anyone's ever done for me. Helena looked up in surprise. Really? Really? You cared about my life even when you couldn't be part of it. You celebrated my successes from a distance. Lara's voice broke. You loved me when I didn't even know I needed to be loved. Helena set the laptop aside and pulled out a thick notebook. This is the worst one. I wrote it last year, on the anniversary of the day you graduated. She opened to a bookmarked page and began to read aloud, her voice shaky. 5 years ago today, I watched you walk away and told myself it was for the best. You were young, brilliant, destined for greatness. I was your professor, bound by ethics and age and the weight of power I never wanted. But tonight, alone in my empty apartment, I let myself imagine a different ending. One where I was brave enough to speak, where you were old enough to choose, where love mattered more than propriety. In this other life, I tell you how I feel the night before graduation. I tell you that you've changed me, that knowing you has been the greatest gift of my academic career. In this other life, you don't look shocked or uncomfortable or sorry for me. You smile and say you've been waiting for me to be brave enough to speak. In this other life, we don't waste 5 years pretending we don't love each other. We don't build separate lives around the hole where the other should be. But this is not that life. This is the life where I love you from a distance, where I celebrate your successes in secret, where I write terrible poetry about what might have been. And maybe that's enough. Maybe loving you quietly is better than not loving you at all. But God, how I wish I could have been braver. How I wish I could have chosen love over fear, truth over safety, you over everything else. Maybe in another life, we get it right. Maybe in another life, love wins. Helena's voice broke on the last line. She closed the notebook and looked at Lara with tears streaming down her face. That's who I really am. A middle-aged woman writing fantasy poetry about her former student. Pathetic, right? Lara was sobbing now. She reached for Helena's face, cupping it gently in her hands. You beautiful, ridiculous woman. Don't you see? See what? This is that other life. This is the life where love wins. Helena's eyes widened. What? You were brave enough to speak. I was old enough to choose. We didn't waste 5 years. We needed 5 years to become who we are now. Lara, you wrote about what might have been, but this is what is. We found each other again. We're here together. And I love you so much it terrifies me. You love me. I love you. I love your terrible poetry and your secret folders and your beautiful obsessive heart. I love that you cared about my life even when you couldn't be part of it. Helena was staring at her like she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. I love you too, she whispered. I've loved you for 5 years. I'll love you for the rest of my life. They kissed then, desperate and hungry, and full of 5 years of longing finally given permission to exist. When they broke apart, both were breathless. Stay tonight? Helena asked. Are you sure? I'm sure. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of holding back. Then yes, I'll stay. Helena smiled through her tears. In that case, I should probably warn you. I have more terrible poetry. I can't wait to read every word. They spent the rest of the evening going through Helena's box of writings, laughing and crying and marveling at the parallel lives they'd built around missing each other. And when they finally went to bed, it wasn't with the desperate urgency of long-denied passion, but with the tender certainty of 2 people who had finally found their way home. 6 months later, Lara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Helena humming in the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom windows of Helena's apartment, their apartment now, officially as of last month when Lara had finally made her Boston assignment permanent. She padded to the kitchen in Helena's oversized Harvard t-shirt, finding her girlfriend. The word still made her giddy, standing at the stove making pancakes. Good morning, beautiful, Helena said, turning to kiss her softly. Good morning. What's the occasion? Lara nodded at the elaborate breakfast spread. Can't I make pancakes for the woman I love without an occasion? You can, but you're practically vibrating with excitement, so I know something's up. Helena grinned. I got an email this morning, from a publisher. Lara's eyes widened. About your poetry. About my poetry. 3 months ago, Lara had finally convinced Helena to submit her work to literary magazines. It had taken weeks of encouragement and gentle bullying, but Helena had eventually sent out a collection of poems, not the ones about Lara, but newer work about love and second chances, and finding yourself in unexpected places. And, Lara prompted, they want to publish a chapbook, 24 poems about love and transformation. Lara screamed and threw her arms around Helena, nearly knocking over the coffee pot in the process. I'm so proud of you. I knew this would happen. Your work is incredible. It's just a small press. It's a beginning. It's validation. It's proof that you're not just a professor or a bookstore clerk, you're a poet." Helena's eyes filled with tears. "I couldn't have done this without you. You gave me the courage to try." "You had the courage all along. You just needed someone to remind you." They ate breakfast on the small balcony overlooking Marlborough Street, planning Helena's poetry reading and discussing which poems to include in the chapbook. "I want to dedicate it to you," Helena said, as they lingered over second cups of coffee. "You don't have to do that. I want to. You're the reason I started writing again. You're the reason I believe in love again." Lara reached across the small table and took Helena's hand. "What would the dedication say?" Helena smiled. "I was thinking something simple. For LM, who taught me that some stories are worth the wait." Perfect. They spent the morning at Whitmore's Books, where Helena had convinced Mr. Whitmore to host a small poetry reading series. Helena was nervous about reading her work aloud, but Lara had promised to be in the front row for moral support. "What if no one comes?" Helena fretted as they arranged chairs in the back section of the store. "People will come. And even if they don't, you'll still be brave enough to read your truth out loud. That's what matters. When did you become so wise? I learned from the best professor I ever had." Helena blushed, even after all these months. "You're never going to let me forget that I was your professor, are you?" "Never. It's part of our story. Our very inappropriate story. Our very romantic story." That evening, 15 people gathered in the bookstore to hear Helena read. It wasn't a huge crowd, but it was enough. Helena's voice shook as she began the first poem, but by the third, she'd found her rhythm. Lara watched from the front row, her heart swelling with pride as Helena shared her words about resilience and hope, and the courage to love again. These weren't the secret poems about longing. These were poems about fulfillment, about dreams realized, about second chances seized. After the reading, people lingered to buy books and chat with Helena about her work. Lara hung back, letting Helena have her moment, but she caught her eye across the room and smiled. "That was beautiful," said an elderly woman who'd been in the front row. "Your poems about love, they feel so real, so lived in." "Thank you," Helena said. "They come from experience. The best ones always do. Are you married?" Helena glanced at Lara, who was pretending to browse the mystery section but clearly listening. "Not yet," Helena said, "but I'm with someone wonderful, someone who makes me believe in happy endings." The woman followed Helena's gaze to Lara. "She's lovely. How long have you been together?" 6 months officially, but I've been in love with her for 5 years. 5 years? That's quite a story. It is. We had to wait for the right time, the right circumstances, but some things are worth waiting for. Later, after everyone had gone home and they'd cleaned up the bookstore, Helena and Lara walked hand in hand through the common. "I'm proud of you," Lara said. "You were amazing tonight." "I was terrified." "You were brave." "There's a difference." They stopped at the bench where they'd had their first real conversation months ago. The trees were green now, full of spring promise instead of autumn endings. "Lara," Helena said, turning to face her. "I need to ask you something, okay?" Helena took a deep breath. "I know we haven't been together very long officially. I know we're still figuring things out. But I also know that I don't want to spend another day without you in my life." Lara's heart started racing. "Helena, I'm not proposing. Not yet. But I'm asking. Would you consider it? Someday? The idea of building a life together, officially?" Lara felt tears spring to her eyes. "Are you asking if I want to marry you someday?" "I'm asking if you can imagine a future where we're not just dating, where we're partners in every sense of the word." "Helena Carter, I've been imagining that future since I was 23 years old. Is that a yes?" "That's a yes, absolutely, whenever you're ready to ask properly." Helena laughed and pulled Lara into her arms. "I love you so much. I love you too. More than I ever thought possible." They kissed under the streetlights, surrounded by the sounds of the city they'd both learned to call home. "So, what happens now?" Helena asked. "Now we live happily ever after." You really are an optimist, and you really are worth waiting for. 1 year later, the dedication page of Helena's first full-length poetry collection read simply, For Lara, who taught me that love is always worth the risk. The book launch was held at Whitmore's Books on a crisp October evening, exactly 2 years after Lara had first walked back into Helena's life. The store was packed with friends, colleagues, and poetry lovers who'd discovered Helena's work through her chapbook. Lara stood in the back, watching Helena read from her new collection. Poems about transformation, about courage, about the way love could reshape a life when you were brave enough to let it. "This last poem," Helena said, looking directly at Lara, "is for someone who changed my understanding of what it means to be brave. It's called After the Autumn Leaves. We met again in autumn, when the leaves were falling and I thought my story was over. You walked into my bookstore like a character from a poem I'd been too afraid to write. For 5 years, I'd carried the weight of unspoken words, the burden of love unexpressed. But you saw through my careful walls to the woman underneath, the one who'd been waiting for permission to hope again. Now it's spring, and we're planting a garden in the backyard of the house we bought together. You laugh as I read you the terrible poems I wrote when I thought I'd lost you forever. And I understand now that some stories don't end with autumn leaves falling. Some stories begin with the courage to speak, with the wisdom to wait, with the faith that love will find a way. This is our story. Not perfect, but true. Not easy, but worth it. Not ending, but beginning again and again with each day we choose to love each other without fear." The applause was thunderous. Helena's eyes found Lara's across the crowded room, and she smiled. The same smile that had captivated Lara in lecture halls years ago, but brighter now, unguarded, full of joy. After the reading, after the congratulations and book signings and champagne toasts, Helena and Lara walked home through the quiet streets of their neighborhood. "Good reading tonight," Lara said, squeezing Helena's hand. "The best audience I've ever had." "Even better than your literature classes?" "Much better." This time, I gotta tell the truth. They stopped in front of their house, a small Victorian they'd bought 6 months ago, complete with the garden Helena had mentioned in her poem. "Helena," Lara said, turning to face her on their front steps. "Yes?" "I have something for you." Lara pulled a small velvet box from her jacket pocket. Helena's breath caught. "Lara, I know we said we'd wait. I know we're taking things slow, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life with you, and I don't want to wait another day to ask." Lara dropped to one knee on their front porch, under the light they'd installed together last month. "Helena Carter, will you marry me?" Helena was crying and laughing at the same time. "You're supposed to let me propose to you. I'm the one who brought it up first. You can propose to me next time." "Next time? When we renew our vows in 50 years? Helena held out her shaking hand. Yes, absolutely, yes. Lara slipped the ring onto Helena's finger. A simple band with a small diamond, elegant and understated, just like Helena herself. "I love you," Helena whispered. "I love you too. Forever and always." They kissed on their front porch, surrounded by the life they'd built together, the future they'd chosen together, the love they'd finally been brave enough to claim. Inside their house, on Helena's desk, sat a manuscript for her next poetry collection. The working title was Lessons in Courage, and it was dedicated to the idea that it's never too late to rewrite your story. Some love stories take 5 years to begin. Some take a lifetime to unfold. But the best ones, the ones worth waiting for, are the ones where love wins in the end. And this was definitely one of those stories. The end. Thank you for following Lara and Helena's journey. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and let me know in the comments what kind of love story you'd like to see next. Remember, it's never too late for a second chance at happiness. Until next time, keep believing.